Good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitburn.
Here.
Commissioner Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Desmond.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Becker.
Present.
Commissioner White.
Present.
Commissioner Mathis.
Present.
Commissioner McKenzie is absent. Commissioner Von Wilpert is absent. Alternate Commissioner Drake is absent. Alternate Commissioner Vargas is absent. Alternate Commissioner McCann.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Browning. Here. There is a quorum with 9 members present.
Thank you. Commissioner Becker, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Becker. Item 3 is our review of the agenda for this morning's meeting. Mr. Simons, anything that you would like to touch on?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Commission. So no changes to the agenda itself. A couple of supplemental items, though, to make note of. One is we do have a revised agenda report, slightly revised for 7A, and Joelle will cover the changes on that, so that should be on the dais. And then separately, Commission, you should have a letter from me to CALAFCO that I'm going to briefly address as part of the EO report. And then last but not least, Commissioner McKenzie got stuck in traffic, so eventually she will make it today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Let's go ahead and take non-agenda public comment. This provides an opportunity for anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of LAFCO. I have a couple of slips here for non-agenda public comment. We will begin with Janet Rogers. And is William Rogers seating time? Yes.
Yes, so I should have 6 minutes.
Okay. And you have a slideshow, you said?
Yeah, it's up.
Total of 6 between the two.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm Janet Rogers, co-chair of the Embarcadero Coalition. Next slide. I'm aware of your efforts to oversee the Port of San Diego. You looked at the grand jury report and legislation on ethics reform. I want to focus on some of the significant local problems, like we shouldn't have to sue the port to deliver on legal commitments, and how the port is openly breaking the rules. Next slide. The port mandate is to maximize public access, since this is public land. The real estate department dominates the port. A parks department doesn't even exist. Parks are seen as a liability that costs money to retain, but they should be seen as an asset. It matters because SANDAG estimates downtown will grow to nearly 75,000 residents by 2050. We will need 150 to 200 acres of parkland for that density of population. But the city isn't coming close to that number, including parks on port land. The port needs to increase its number of parks since this is public land. Next slide. The port is maximizing revenue, not public access, and privatizing and monetizing the whole Embarcadero while violating permits. Next slide. Start with the current Port Master Plan. After 20 years, the Coastal Commission had to threaten to sue the port for not creating the Navy Pier Park. Why should they have to sue? Next slide. For 25 years, the port has not delivered on the commitments in the North Embarcadero Visionary Plan and Port Master Plan. They ruined the possibility of a 10-acre world-class oval park at Broadway, never made the 100-foot-wide esplanade with parks and plazas, never built the Crescent Pier with 12,000-square-foot park, but they got Lane Field hotel developer to pay for a skinny linear Lane Field park, which is about half of that blue rectangle. Next slide. What about current violations? I looked at 2 leases and coastal permits, the Portside Pier and the North Lanefield Hotel, which is a Marriott. Anyone would be naive to think that the restaurant or the hotel did anything without getting the port's blessing. The schematic is the second floor at Portside Pier. The yellow permitted area has a walkway around the outside and a large public viewing deck with 108 seats for the public. The port must not have liked the 3,711 square feet that wasn't making them any money. So they robbed us by moving Catch Grill upstairs and letting another restaurant dockside into the glass dome. This is a blatant violation of the permit. I have complained to both the Port and the Coastal Commission. Nothing has happened so far. I gave each of you a free appetizer coupon from the general manager, not me. Please eat at one of the restaurants, but check out how Catch has robbed us of the public space. Or just walk over there after this meeting to see for yourself. Next slide. The Lanefield Marriott has a detailed public access plan accepted by the Coastal Commission and part of their permit with 3 levels of public access. They are robbing the public on all 3 levels. Level 2 is supposed to be shops and restaurant. Instead, it's a private event space, not public. Level 5 terrace had no commercial business permitted, but was an open terrace. The port can't stand public space not making money. So half the terrace now has a harbor and sky lounge, which they have the gall to call their rooftop lounge since they robbed us of a real rooftop lounge. The rooftop, level 17, has a bar and terrace in the public access plan. It doesn't even exist since that level is another floor of rooms and there's no public access to the roof. Next slide. In the future, the port plans to eliminate Rocco Park against Coastal Section 3711.5 and condense everyone into the Marina Park North Peninsula. Parks require maintenance and don't generate revenue every day. The port wants a 300-foot building making money. Next slide. To summarize, the port didn't deliver on commitments for public facilities in the North Embarcadero Visionary Plan unless someone else paid for it. They weaseled out of the Oval World-Class Park. This park was a centerpiece of a year-long process with the port, citizens groups, and city, culminating in a Coastal Commission approval amendment to the Port Master Plan. Then the port destroyed the ability to create it. Next, the Coastal Commission had to threaten to sue to get Navy Pier Park. They didn't deliver on a 100-foot wide esplanade from Grape to Broadway with parks and plazas. No one else to pay for it, so it didn't happen. They robbed the public of permitted public space in favor of revenue-generated endeavors at Portside Pier and Lanefield Marriott. The port plans to eliminate the existing Rocco Park to generate more revenue in violation of the Coastal Act to distribute public facilities. I decided to stop there, but the list goes on. Next slide. We are concerned that the Coastal Commission needs help from a local authority to oversee the Port of San Diego and deal with issues in a timely fashion. The port had $31 million excess last year, and that's before the Chula Vista Convention Center opens. We would be happy to meet with the staff or commissioners of LAFCO to go into more detail about the problems we see with the port not fulfilling its public access mandate, environmental justice issues, openly deciding not to mitigate significant pollution and environmental issues identified by CEQA because the economic development in the new master plan would generate so much money. Dealing with ethical problems and conflicts of interest. If LAFCO can focus on maximizing public access, which is the mandate, instead of just expanding economic development, then please step into that role. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any public comment virtually. Clerk, do we have any online public comment or telephone public comment?
None.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and take up the consent items then. These are items 5A through 5G. Clerk, do we have any public comment on the consent items?
No public comment for consent.
Okay, thank you, Clerk. Is there a motion to approve the consent items? We have a motion by Vice Chair Willis and a second by Commissioner Anderson. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathis? Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
So there are 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you, Clerk. That brings us to our public hearing item, and that is item 6A, the proposed final report and related actions for the municipal service review on the Oceanside region. Do we have any commissioner disclosures of ex parte communications on this item? Seeing none, let's go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Simons to begin our presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to ask Michaela to start us off, and then I know we have a couple of staff members in attendance who will help Michaela with any questions that may come up in the conversation.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Keen. Good morning, Commissioners. Analyst Michaela Peters. So before the Commission for formal action today is the proposed final draft on the municipal service review for the Oceanside region and the 3 local agencies that are subject to LAFCO's study directive as set by the legislature. So these local agencies being the City of Oceanside, the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District, and the Morro Hills Community Services District. So, as you know, the final report builds off of the revised draft presented in August and is intentionally organized to serve as your independent evaluation of A, the availability, B, the demand, and C, the performance of these 3 agencies' core municipal functions relative to community needs with 3 explicit uses going forward. To 1, guide LAFCO's related task and statute to review and update local agency spheres every 5 years, and in doing so, set immediate eligibility for annexations and out-of-agency service agreements. To 2, inform LAFCO's decision-making process and taking up any actual jurisdictional changes that may be proposed in the region over the next 5-year period. And 3, authorize, if warranted, an action by LAFCO to initiate its own proposals specific to forming, consolidating, and/or dissolving special districts. So as for the contents, the proposed final report is anchored by individual agency profiles that collectively contribute to an executive summary, offering key conclusions and related recommendations that have been generated in preparing the requisite determinative statements. The proposed final report, with its agency profiles and executive summary, also importantly, remain largely intact from the draft presented in August and the subsequent public review and comment period. This said, the changes that have been made in bringing forward the proposed final report are nonetheless important and meaningful. They also directly tie to comments received starting in August from the dais and over the course of the review period, including feedback directly by the subject agencies and/or their constituents. So with this context in mind, I would like to take the next few minutes to go over key conclusions and recommendations provided in the proposed final report and highlight where any substantive changes have been made. And if you'd like to follow along, this is starting on page 131 of your agenda packet. So starting with key conclusions, they number 8 and serve as thematic topics generated in the review of the region relative to LAFCO's growth management duties and interests. They are listed here on the screen with a red asterisk to denote which conclusions we have edited, and I will go ahead into each with more detail. So this review somewhat served as an introductory MSR to the 3 agencies, its constituents, and the Commission, given these agencies had previously been part of countywide MSRs in the past, with the objective serving to provide info on service functions, as well as establish baseline information to track and measure service functions going forward. As for number 2, we softened the language and explained that the patterns showing a slowdown in growth are most likely a result of change in demographics, reduced market opportunities, and increased community empowerment in regard to decision-making surrounding development. We softened the language for number 3 in regard to the effect of the significant slowdown in population growth resulting in sizable housing costs. Due to the skyrocketing, the private market's ability to construct new housing has presented its own challenges, as a lower rate of permits have been granted, although with current projections for the coming years anticipating the city meeting affordability goals in the coming years. And there have been no changes to number 4, which explains the city's ability to restore its reserves after years of shortfalls, partly due to Measure X, the half-cent sales tax, which is on the ballot for extension. No changes to 5 and 6 either, with 5 explaining that all 3 agencies have sufficient capacities within their core municipal functions to meet current and future demands, but premised on Measure X being extended past 2026, and we should know that hopefully by Wednesday. Number 6 stays intact, with LAFCO seeing Oceanside as an emerging key urban center for North County, considering its status as a full-service municipality and extensive access to all sorts of transportation and development opportunities therein. Number 7 has been added since the last draft in August and captures the general unease of slip renters within the Oceanside Harbor after receiving about 52 letters from Harbor District residents expressing concern for public safety and financial management. With nearly 1,000 slip renters who contribute over 80% of the annual revenues within the harbor, many of its users feel disconnected from decision-making, requiring LAFCO's attention. Lastly, number 8 contemplates LAFCO's decision to conduct limited updates to established spheres of influence, though including a 250-acre disadvantaged unincorporated community, or DUC, to be labeled a special study area. This action would support LAFCO's policy on environmental justice and help ensure equitable service levels for all residents. As for the recommendations, they number nearly 20, with the acknowledgement that some are more substantive than others. And with the invitation to cover all of them, I'm going to go ahead and highlight just the ones we believe to be separate in importance and shown with a red asterisk. So number 1, we added language to number 1, which supports our recommendations regarding directing growth to the city, considering its status as a full-service municipality, although we should be cognizant of the city's own goals regarding its general plan, and continue to coordinate with the city on this effort. Number 4, depending on the results of the extension of Measure X, all jurisdictional changes involving the Oceanside region should exercise minimal impacts, keeping the city's general fund in mind. So once again, we should know these results of Measure X on Wednesday. Number 9, the Harbor District should publicly distinguish itself. The small craft harbor district is its own legal entity. However, this should be more well known to the public, and this can be done with a simple separate website or social media and the like. Number 10, the harbor district should formalize staff support with the city by creating an MOU or a memorandum of understanding to clearly establish roles and responsibilities as well as associated costs. Number 11 has been a big topic of discussion over the past few months, and that is the Harbor District should deactivate its patrol and rescue function. So it appears the small craft harbor district... That's okay. So it appears the small craft harbor district informally deactivated its patrol and rescue function in 2009, which has been assumed by the city of Oceanside. But Small Craft Harbor District's legal authorization still remains active under LAFCO. So to clarify the decision-making and service expectations, as well as mitigate potential liabilities, Small Craft Harbor District should make a formal determination on whether it is responsible for patrol and rescue. Number 12, LAFCO can consider a governance study on the Harbor District's options. So there's been much community interest in exploring the feasibility of Small Craft Harbor District going independent in order to provide direct constituent influence on decision-making within the harbor, specifically in regards to safety and finance decisions. So if approved today, the Commission could decide to add a governance study to the work plan to assess the functional and political benefits for both the city and the district if they were to become independent of each other. This would most likely be followed by an election should we go this route. And number 13, a special study area has been identified spanning nearly 250 acres and covering 2 non-contiguous ducts currently within the city of Vista, although on the border of Oceanside, and if approved today, would allow for out-of-agency services via either city to extend urban supporting services to these areas without preparing a new MSR and supporting our environmental justice policy. And lastly, number 19 was added after our last draft and reiterates the responsibility of LAFCO to prioritize proposals that would directly promote environmental justice and provide benefits to marginalized communities. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to the EO.
Thank you, Michaela. And so, Commission, before you obviously is a weighty municipal service review. One of the benefits of doing regional service reviews is the economies of scale. Okay, so one of the disadvantages, though, of course, is we bring you a rather large document. So hopefully over the last 3 hearings, we have addressed the topics of interest, and with the track change format of this proposed final report, hopefully we are illuminating the changes that we have made. I do want to just point out what the threshold is for today. So under policy and certainly under statute, the question before the Commission is, do you believe that staff has brought you a service review that meets the mark with respect to adequately informing these 3 decision points that Michaela noted in her presentation? And that is, do you feel you have enough information to subsequently proceed with sphere of influence updates for all 3 agencies? We would presumably bring that to you at the next meeting. Do you believe that you have enough macro information before you, should any jurisdictional change come before you over the next 5 years, to help guide that decision-making process? And then finally, Commission, although we're not recommending it, this is the source document in statute. Should you want to make your own initiating application to create, consolidate, or dissolve a special district, do you feel you have enough information in this item before you? So that's the threshold. I know that we have engendered quite a bit of communications and comments from constituents of the Small Harbor Craft District. I know many of them are going to speak to you today. I will hold my comments on the recommendation to prepare a governance study down the line, so you can first hear those comments from the constituents. I appreciate their attendance. I also want to appreciate City Manager Jonathan Borrego, who's sitting right in the front row from Oceanside. And I want to extend my apology to Mr. Borrego. I know that this was the first service review that he's entertained as City Manager in Oceanside. And we could have done better in communicating with your office early on, and I appreciate that created some missteps. That's on me. But hopefully we got it right, or get closer to getting right in this final document. So with that, staff's ready for the Commission to take up this item. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you
Chair,
both.
can I just real quickly, I didn't jump in soon enough on when you had any ex parte notifications. I just want to put out there that I did have a conversation with Deputy Mayor Ryan Keim from the City of Oceanside, and also had texted with Jonathan Borrego concerning the MSR.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's open the hearing on this item, and we have quite a bit of public comment here in the room, and we will begin with Jonathan Borrego.
Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to come back before this body and share our thoughts and opinions on the MSR. Of course, I want to acknowledge Keen's comments as well. We really appreciate hearing that. That does mean a lot to us. There are a few things that I think could be improved in the process, and I will touch upon those towards the end of my presentation. I'm not exactly sure what the time limit is here. Okay, I would ask if you could indulge me a little bit. If not, that's fine. I'll cut it off at 3 minutes. But as the beneficiary of the study, I would hope that I might get a little bit more time. But anyway. Do I need to ask that question now, or can I ask that question now?
We need to keep everybody to 3 minutes just for the sake of consistency.
Okay,
if you have somebody here who can cede you time, that's another way to go.
I do not, so I will keep my comments brief and get going here.
All right.
I just also wanted to acknowledge.
Okay. You have somebody ceding you time, so you have at least 6 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Would you please turn in a speaker slip just so we have a record of that? Thank you.
Thank you. So I appreciate that extra time here. First of all, I did, in addition to acknowledging Keith's comments, which really, as I said, were meaningful, I really do appreciate that. And again, I will speak a little bit to the process towards the latter part of my comments here. I also wanted to acknowledge the absence of Mayor Sanchez. She was not able to make it here this morning, but I know she is listening, and she did ask and that I mentioned a couple things that were still on her mind. First of all, I'm very sensitive, as I am, to any discussion in the document that infers that South Morrow Hills, which is our prime ag area, would be suited for future development or additional intensification. I just want to reiterate that from the city standpoint, we are very much interested in preserving the agricultural character of that area and in no way want to encourage additional growth or density in that area, even though, on the surface it might appear ripe for future development because it is a fairly low density area. Also want to reiterate our objection, as was echoed in our September 19th letter, which is included in your agenda packet, to the idea of studying our sphere of influence with Vista. As I mentioned in my comment letter, both the City of Oceanside and the City of Vista, in writing, have expressed their disinterest in studying this matter. Given that neither city is interested at this point, I would ask that that be removed. Again, that's also the opinion of the mayor. 100% agree with that. I would ask that rather than that, perhaps we just defer this item to our next MSR cycle, or even to the MSR review for the City of Vista, if that is in fact going to be happening in the foreseeable future. I'm not exactly sure when that item is up for review. There is one comment that still puzzles us that remains in the document. It was touched upon this morning, and that refers to statements in the document that imply that the city was running budget deficits in the past prior to Measure X. We are simply not aware that we've ever run budget deficits, at least in the last 20 years, according to our staff that are still around. So I'm not sure. We're still puzzled by that. And that is a bothersome comment to us because I think we're very fiscally prudent in our city, and I'm not sure why the document continues to imply that we used to run budget deficits when, to our knowledge, it didn't. If I'm mistaken, and if LAFCO staff can present the documentation to back up that claim, I would very much like to hear it. We do appreciate that the staff did remove some references to boundary changes to the Harbor District, which were included in an earlier draft of the document, which implied that the city had embarked on some boundary changes in 1995. We were certainly unaware of that. It didn't sound like LAFCO staff had the documentation to back that up. I understand those references have been removed. That was very important to us because that caused a little bit of unnecessary consternation with some of our tenants in the harbor who were wondering how that happened in 1995. Again, not sure exactly where that language came from, but I understand it has been stricken. With respect to the harbor, I would like to express that we as a city are not in objection to any sort of future governance studies. Certainly, we know that there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of communication with our harbor stakeholders, and we are committed to that. Certainly have no objection to the study. As I mentioned, our only request is that that governance study be conducted by someone who has expertise in harbor management affairs, and it's my understanding in communications with Mr. Simons that a consultant with harbor expertise would be brought on to help that study. I think it's very important to make sure that the facts are straight, and it's a very thorough and professionally prepared report in the interest of all those that are affected. I do also want to acknowledge Michaela's comment about softening some of the language in the document about channeling future growth towards Oceanside. It was very unnerving for us to read that in the document when we had really never discussed that with the LAFCO staff in terms of Oceanside becoming kind of a focal point for future growth in the county. For North County anyway, without first discussing that with us, because that implies a lot of things. And certainly the city has its own future growth plans as expressed in its current and in our general plan update, which is currently in process. Moving towards process, a couple things that I want to reiterate that I mentioned in my last presentation. First of all, I really do think that LAFCO staff should prepare what we call a LAFCO MSR roadmap for all future agencies in the future. I meet often with my counterparts, city managers from throughout the county. I discussed this process with them, and we all agreed that having a roadmap to this process that would be shared early on, that set expectations in terms of the timing, when documents were going to be released, what documents were going to be released, what the role of the public and the agency itself would be in reviewing these draft documents is very important. I think you're just going to keep hearing from future city managers if you don't do that, because we take this very personally, because it is our city that we're responsible for. And without having a very clear understanding of the process on the front end, it's just you're going to keep running into issues with any city that you study down the road. Finally, I really want to reiterate the importance of allowing cities to review the entire draft document, including the recommendations on the front end. I brought this up at the last meeting. It sounded like some members of the commission were in agreement. It makes sense for us to review everything in the draft form and not keep the recommendations from us until the full public draft is reviewed, because there could be some things that feed into those recommendations that are erroneous, and we should catch them on the front end. So with that, thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. Next is Stephen Brown.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Stephen Brown, and I live on 266 Morrow Hills Road, which is one of the many blind corners or curves in the county. And I'm happy to say that since our home was built, only one car has exceeded the speed limit and come down our hill, taken down a power pole, and blacked out the community. I have a very personal interest in circulation. I serve on the circulation committee for Fallbrook, and we are very concerned with traffic calming in Fallbrook itself. Now, earlier this year, the Morrow Hills Community Service District had a meeting, which was attended. It was a stand-up room only meeting, and three things came out of that meeting. One was the appointment of an ad hoc committee to talk about traffic calming and protection of the residential community. Three things came out. One was the creation of speed ramps throughout the area where speeds were excessive. Second was radar speed sign, which could be moved around so that people would be aware of the speeds that they were traveling. And the third was to reduce the speed limit from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour, and so post those on appropriate signage. The irony is that the residents in this district are very concerned with traffic calming, and yet we have a report that wants to increase the speed limit from our current 35 miles an hour to 55 miles an hour. Now, the problem is we only have 5.9 miles of road. On those roads, it's all residential, there are no shoulders, and it's a bike route. Increasing that speed limit would create severe danger to bicycles. We have a lot of agricultural workers who depend on bicycle transport to go to the ag section of South Morrow Hills. They would be put at great risk with this increased speed limit. So in summary, I would say that the 55 mile an hour speed limit is not appropriate. The biggest problem is human nature. If there is no enforcement, there is no compliance. There is no enforcement of speed limits on private roads. And it becomes very difficult then. There are some people who just will speed. I don't care what the speed limit is, they will speed because there is no consequence. So I would request that that specific item of the speed limit increase be considered and removed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next is Thomas Habrington.
Good morning. Thomas Harrington. I'm the president of the Morrow Hills Community Services District. We've had the pleasure of interacting with several of your board members here in the past, and now we're here to plead our case. I would just like to thank LAFCO for including us in this regional study. It's a small area. We only have about 400 property owners. But there appears to be a perspective that's missing in this report, and especially the recommendation number 15, which Mr. Brown spoke about. Morro Hills, along with many communities within San Diego County, are experiencing traffic that is difficult to control. We have tried to enlist county and City of Oceanside help to provide policing on their jurisdictions as they come up next to us, but we don't have that. We're considered a public road privately maintained by the county's standards. So we can't get law enforcement, much like areas of Ramona and other small communities in our area. Recommendation 15 is asking us to revisit this and raise this rate. And as Mr. Brown stated, we had a real outcry from our property owners and a lot of people that live along Sleeping Indian asking for something to be done. We took into account traffic study recommendations that we had received from our traffic engineer and those current implications that the county implementations that the County of San Diego is using throughout Fallbrook, and lowered the speed limit, put up the signs, made a couple of other measurements. And for LAFCO to come in with this recommendation to crank the speeds back up is kind of walking back our efforts. Our radar sign has proved that we have lowered speeds. Our property owners in the area have recognized the fact that these improvements we put in speed tables, which were also in a part of the previous traffic studies. And these efforts have reduced traffic, have calmed down the high-speed traffic that's going through. We had people passing buses with their stop signs out. We had passing on blind curves. There was a lot of dangerous things that didn't turn into an accident report, but scared the hell out of our property owners. We've made these improvements. We feel we've developed a plan to proceed ahead with good traffic engineering backing, and we would just like LAFCO to consider that recommendation 15 under the guise of a residential use being oppressed by a growing traffic problem that we don't control. Between Temecula, the base, Oceanside, development is all around us, and we used to be a little perimeter, but now we are in the middle of it. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Mark Malaby?
Thank you, Chairperson and Committee. Appreciate your time. Really, what I really want to talk about is the harbour management, and really going on to, I think, what was item number 12, which was possible self-governance for the harbour as far as accountability. I think this is it's important for us to really consider this study. Probably the biggest case in point that I can bring up to the team here is during the we had a ad hoc committee that worked to implement the Brady Harbour Maintenance Bill. A signature piece of that work, which was between the harbour management, the city, and the slip renters, who I represent in HVAC, was that we would have separate accounts and accountability for those expenditures as it currently sits. All of the harbour funds go into pretty much the general fund of the city, and we wanted to make sure that increases in our slip fees made it to managing the harbour. This was not done. It was the signature piece that we all agreed to, and then when it came before the city, it was removed for a small technical reason that was easily resolvable, and so that leads the slip renters into a condition of, we don't feel like our best interests are being served, and we would like more accountability and more visibility, and so I would really highly recommend that we allow this study to go forward to be able to look at governance that was possibly going to a way, possibly even including governance that existed prior to the changes in 2009 that removed our self-governance. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Liz Rea?
Got the short and the tall of it. My name's Liz Ray. I've been a slip renter since 2000, and I'm here to address the issues, some of the issues of the Small Craft Harbor District. Seeing as many changes as I have over the years, I have so many questions and not enough answers. I applaud LAFCO for coming forth and showing that they also have questions and not enough answers. At this point, I would like to recommend that you go forward with the municipal service review and make accountability for our government agency so that we, the slip renters, the merchants, the leasees, have more opportunity to say where our money is going and how it is spent. I also would like to perhaps add on that we need a forensic accounting over the years because we have no idea how the money is spent. There is a limit that our harbor managers can spend. We used to have a harbor master, but that changed over years because there were 3 gentlemen who wanted to have their retirement upped, so they were put in there. We are now put under Public Works. Unfortunately, Public Works does not know how a harbor runs. So therefore, we need your help to get a group together that can run our harbor and make sure that our enterprise funds go for running the harbor. Thank you.
Thank you. George Ray.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to talk. My name is George Ray, and I live in Oceanside, and my wife, as she just said, that we've had a boat in the harbor for over 20 years. First and foremost, I want to thank LAFCO for performing this MSR in Oceanside Harbor. The document really opened our eyes. I'm a self-proclaimed historian of the harbor because I like to understand where everything went. And the MSR stated that the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor was formed in 1960 as an independent special district. And then in 1995, it changed to a dependent. It also stated that the harbor is approximately 100 acres, but the jurisdiction now, as of 1995, covers 42.2 miles or 27,000 acres. And it also stated that the police was changed from the Harbor Patrol to the Oceanside Police Department without due process according to the LAFCO processes. I would like to state that I feel it would be appropriate for the commission, this commission, to consider authorizing a future governance study to determine the feasibility of the following. To reestablish the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor as an independent district. To reestablish our sphere of influence to the harbor only. To establish our own police force according to the state code that allows us to do so, and to establish and direct our own finances as an independent enterprise fund for the benefit of the harbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Les George.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you. I'm here to support the LAFCO MSR service review recommendation. My name is Les George. I've been a slip renter in Oceanside Harbor for 44 years. I run a small business in the city of Oceanside Harbor, and I'm currently a member of the Harbor and Beaches Advisory Committee, and I represent about 250 slip holders. On your item number 4, it speaks about budgeting true-ups. Well, budgeting true-ups mean we raise the slip rent for all the people that are in the harbor and increases their rates. But each time the increase would come, we'd ask the city, okay, how are we looking? Oh, looking good. Everything's going to be continuing on just fine. We can cover the expenditures. It wasn't. For example, $800,000 today, plus a little bit, goes to the city of Oceanside, and it goes into the general fund. The people that made this decision are the Harbor Board and the Harbor Council. They wear the same hat, basically a conflict of interest, but they're taking $800,000. And I read the document, and it specifically says this contract was signed and does not have to be utilized anywhere in the city of Oceans or in the Harbor District at all. In 2010-2011 fiscal year, the city ran into some budget issues. They borrowed $5.2 million of money from the Small Craft Harbor District, which was never repaid. Item number 7, it says there's basically around 950 boats in Oceanside Harbor. 83% of those boats that are in the harbor are over 25 years old. I walked the docks and checked them. This harbor is a working person's harbor, not a rich man's harbor like some of the other ones they use as comparison with us. Per the LAFCO report, 4/5 of the revenues that are collected and utilized in the harbor are coming from those slip renters. These stakeholders have no input into the way their money is spent other than by an advisory committee that I'm on that we go to recommend to the council, who wears 2 hats, on what we think might work. Most of the time they don't listen. Many of the people on this committee do not have any input whatsoever as far as any buy-in or stakes into this. A lot of them have businesses, they live on the beach, whatever. I'm asked daily by the boaters, well, why is the city not saving any money for our infrastructure and paying attention to that? Most of them feel that the harbor is being utilized as a cash cow to fill their coffers. Last year we had a budget meeting to try to figure out where the monies was gone and how to come up with money for the infrastructure. One of the first things out of the committee's mouth, or one of the persons on the committee, the budget person, well, only 30% of the people that have boats in the city of Oceanside live here, i.e. voters. What about the rest of us? So I guess if they do not vote or they don't have any input. The idea was floated that we could charge 15% more if you live in the city of Oceanside or outside the city of Oceanside. That didn't fly. Recommendation number 9, LAFCO to distinguish a standalone government entity is, in our opinion, and most stakeholders, a very favorable way to go. Number 10, an MOU outlining the areas of district. And number 12, direct constituent influence on making decisions for our safety and financial management. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.
Thank you. Tammy Tunt?
Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak today. Michaela and Keen, thank you so much for your hard work. I really we all appreciated it. The study for the MSR, my name's Tammy Taunt. I am the editor of the Cruise News, which has been a newsletter in the harbor for 27 years now. And I took it over last year. So I've gotten a lot of information I didn't realize I needed. And I've learned a lot. I would love for you to go forward with the governance study for the city, for Oceanside Harbor. Our harbor is in dire need of a lot of maintenance and repair. As Les mentioned, George and Liz, everyone, we all feel like that our finances are going straight to the general fund for the city and not staying in the harbor. We need it to stay in the harbor. We need to separate ourselves from the city. As far as the city council should not be our board of directors, there's a lot of conflict of interest that should be pretty obvious on that one. And of the fact that most city council members have no idea what a harbor is, how to run it, or even what a boat. They know what a boat is, but most of them haven't even been on a boat. So they really don't have the experience and the interest that they need to be running a harbor. And we need our own harbor patrol back. We had a very unique harbor patrol that was basically a lifeguard and a police officer in the same person. We need that back. We need safety on the water and we need safety on the land, which has been very obvious this year. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the future.
Thank you. Those are all the speakers that we have in person. Let's see if we have any virtual public comment. Clerk, anybody wanting to comment online or by phone?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you, Clerk. With that, then, we will close the hearing and we will begin our commission discussion. And we will open it up for any commissioners who wish to provide any comment on this item.
Steve.
Okay, and we will begin with Vice Chair Willis.
On item 15, Tom Harrington, could you come up, Tom? I want to ask you a follow-up question. This 15 does not compel you to change the speed limit, but obviously what I hear you saying is that this has gone beyond revisiting it, that you're so in tune with your residents that this is a safety issue and you don't even want to revisit it. That's what I hear you saying.
Well, it just appeared in the review of this report and these recommendations that it was more of a look at how to make the roads safer for the drivers, how to make it a better corridor for traffic to move safely through it. It was disregarding the fact that this community has become a conflict of residential use and transportation, public transportation use. I realize those are needs, and maybe someday there's a freeway that has to go on that alignment through there. I used to work at the county and do condemnation actions and several other things like that. I'm aware of how those things proceed. But this is still a backcountry road. There's 130 houses that take their primary ingress and egress off of this road. We have no commercial interests up there. To look at it as it should be a 25-mile. There's a lot of property owners that would like to make it even lower. But for years, we had a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. We're trying to hold it at that. We put up some other, what we feel, traffic calming measures. And we just like to have it recognized in the report that we're making those efforts and that we're trying to, and we're doing it all on our budget. We're not asking for any money from anybody. We're taking care of our roads the best we can, and we're dealing with our situations as best we can, and we look for LAFCO to recognize it is all, I guess.
So on the number 15, you're not comfortable with the wording at all? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure I understand.
It doesn't address what our concern was. I just like the board. I would like to have it reworded to where it says that even though the traffic recommendation was this, they also presented safety measures that included what we're doing out there or something.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Desmond.
The Morrill Hills. So they're mostly private roads?
It's a privately maintained public road. The Community Services District was put in place because the county didn't want to maintain it, but it's an entity.
Yeah.
The county supervisors vote to approve the.
Well, I guess what I'm leading to is, can your concerns be brought before the Traffic Commission, the County Traffic Commission, or can't they? Because
attack. No. We see, and that's where that 45-mile-an-hour came from. That was 35 miles an hour on that road. We went through and did a traffic study trying to.
I know, but can it go through the county's traffic commission?
TAC. That's what we were trying to do. Is we tried to get a current report to go to the TAC.
We'll get that through.
TAC did not. They would not hear us.
Well, let's see if we can change that. Okay.
But our deal to go through TAC was trying to get law enforcement up there. That's the problem. 45 mile an hour might work if we had enforcement. We don't. Thank you.
Could I ask a question on this item?
Yes, go ahead. Commissioner McKenzie.
And I don't know who to address this to, but this is a private road. Are private roads still under the auspices of legislation or requirements where if you do a traffic study and the traffic study shows that everybody's going 70 miles an hour, you can't put up signs that say 35 miles an hour. You've got to stay, within that range. And I don't know where that comes from, but I know in my consulting years that was something that was discussed, but that was a few years back.
Through the chair, so LAFCO staff does not view this road network as private. This is, in fact, a public road network with a governing entity, Morrill Hills CSD, having in-right oversight to make improvements and the like to the system. And that's why the county's TAC, I believe it was referred to, would not take up the item because they viewed it as another public entity's domain, much like a city's network.
Oh, and that's what I'm asking. It's a private domain. Are they still required under these numbers to,
So it's
you know,
it's not a
maintain
private
45,
domain. It's
everybody's
a
going 50.
public entity with oversight of the road network, like a city.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Desmond.
I want to go back to the MSR. On this, I just want to get clarification on item 12. This is where LAFCO is exploring the organization of the Oceanside Harbor as an independent agency to provide direct constituent influence and decision-making. And I understand that lines get blurred when the city is actually, you know, wearing both hats and being the Harbor Commission. And but I understand the recommendation is that it will come back to this body first before we decide to go ahead with that study. That's my understanding. Is that right? For the MSR?
Yes, through the chair, that would be correct. It would have to be authorized as part of a work plan.
Okay. So, all right. So that would have to come back to us. I guess in the meantime, I would strongly suggest, I guess, the city working and the harbor folks working together, and maybe you can come to some sort of resolution. But if it's not, then the study would be helpful. But anyway, we'll decide at a later date. On item 13, this is the sphere of influence, which has me a little bit perplexed, where a potential study for 250 acres at Sunset Drive and Melrose for 2 continuous disadvantaged unincorporated areas. And the city of Oceanside and the city of Vista said they do not support this type of concept for adjusting or studying the sphere and influence. Neither city wants this. And what really kind of concerns me is that we haven't really heard from the people who live there if they want this. So what we're proposing is a study for LAFCO's interest in environmental justice by removing barriers, but extending urban supporting services into this area. I don't know if the people really want that in that area. It's urban. There's quite a bit of infrastructure that would need to take place. You know, a lot of curbing would have to go in, and streets widening, and sidewalks potentially, roads, water. There's a lot that would go into this if either city were to take this over. So I'd like to see us hold off on 13 until we actually hear from the residents that live there. Both of the cities don't support this, and this extension of urban supporting services, I'm not even sure that the people living there want that. So I would suggest that we'd take 13 and hold off on the study area, speak to the people that live there first, and bring it back like an item 12 to a future meeting to discuss moving forward with a study in that sphere of influence. So I'll make a motion to accept the MSR with the change in item 13 to come back after we've actually spoken with the people who live there, and like item 12 would bring it back for us for consideration before the study is done. Is that clear, or is mud?
No, I think I have the motion. I think that's clear. Okay. Commissioner Becker.
Yeah, I have some general comments, and I don't have a second for that motion. I don't think that, speaking to the residents, it's not up to the residents. I think it was up to LAFCO about the DUC areas. I think that was just, so for me, I don't necessarily want to see that item come back, because for me, that item brings up a lot of gentrification issues, so I don't really care to see that item come back. But I just want to have discuss some other general comments. So first of all, thank you everyone that came out and spoke today. I know that probably a lot of you didn't even know what an MSR was until you just learned about it. So thank you so much, and thank you especially the city manager for coming out again. I am still uncomfortable with language in this document, because I feel like this document could have been a little bit more factual and not as much a little bit opinionated, as far as things like, especially in the beginning where we are talking about, you know, why growth in the area slowed down. There's just a way to say that growth slowed down over the years for a number of reasons. And you can list them more generally. I don't feel like it was very effective to put a little tiny footnote as to what the city said, because people don't look at footnotes, and it's just not very effective. And it's why I think it's super important that we change our policy coming up later, that we give the recommendations to the cities to look at, and we can, iron out a lot of these inconsistencies. And I think our MSRs and our meetings will be a lot more effective recommendations, and just these meetings will run a lot more smoothly because we've worked out these little inconsistencies with the cities beforehand, and we can just tighten up these little things beforehand, because there's no reason for us to be fighting to say that, and I don't think us as commissioners have enough information to say whether or not that one referendum in 2020 was the reason that growth slowed down. I think that's just getting into the weeds a little bit too much. So I also feel very strongly that we as a government agency are not the ones to be directing growth towards a city, that the city is the one to be locally deciding that, and they know better where their agricultural areas are. So I'm much more apt to be trusting them when they say that they have an agricultural area that they'd like to protect. So there's just little things like that the language, I think, could be softened up. I feel very strongly, and no one has talked about it, but I think it was number 2, and it wasn't asterisk, so I'm happy about that. But the language on studying SB 9, that means that you would go to SANDAG and ask for 4 times the number. So in a single-family zoning, that means 4 times the amount of single-family zoning. So I don't see why we would want to get that number, because the SB 9s, as it turns out, if you just Google it, they're not actually materializing. If you look at the city of San Diego, there's been hardly any applications for SB 9s. So if you are going to be basing anything on SB 9 projections, it just doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to be doing anything, it would be the ADUs, because as it turns out, everybody is doing an ADU. So if we're thinking of doing any studies, it may be ADUs, but it certainly shouldn't be looking at 4 times the amount or SB 9 applications, in my opinion. So if we're talking about removing anything, I would love to remove number 2 from these MSRs. And if you want to do that as a separate policy and look at how SB 9 is working out, how many of those have actually, since it's been enacted, how many have been applied for, how many have been approved. And I guess I do would love to see the city managers feel more comfortable, and if we do have that roadmap type of thing, I think that would be very important, because there's no reason. I mean, we've got important MSRs coming up, and I would like all those agencies, the port, SANDAG, the hospitals, I would like them all to feel very comfortable in the process, and I don't want to see in all of those MSRs this whole tension of they were surprised, we were surprised, and it just doesn't make for a good process. No one's going to take our recommendations, and it just doesn't seem to be, it seems like a waste of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Becker. Further comment from the Commission? Commissioner McKenzie?
I have a couple questions. Can you clarify for me the status of the harbor? It started out as an independent district, is that correct?
So, no. So that was one of the corrections that we needed to make to the historical record. It started off as a dependent, and it is a dependent, still its own legal entity, but it is a dependent throughout its history.
Okay, because that wasn't very clear in the report, so I was totally confused. Okay. I think that's the main question. But then from the city manager, he was indicating that they've never had a budget deficit, but yet our report says that they have. I guess the question is, who's right? Is there a deficit? Was there a deficit?
So through the chair, so the reference was in relationship to how we characterize the city's general fund actuals. So based on our analysis of the city's own audited documents, the first year of our 5-year window, right? So anytime we do these studies, we set a start and finish point. So the first year of the study period was 2018 fiscal year. At that point, the city's general fund had an expense of, I believe, 162 million, but the revenues came in at 154. That's a deficit. And the point being, Measure X came in a year later, and that's where the comment was coming into. And from that point forward, the general fund had an actual surplus of actuals. So if we're wrong, it's based on perhaps a misstatement in the audited statements. But that's the context to that comment.
Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McKenzie. Commissioner White?
I was just hoping to get the motion repeated.
So the Commissioner Desmond, well, I'll let you speak for yourself. Go ahead and repeat the motion that you put out there.
Basically, it's to approve the MSR as it's, except for item, I don't have it in front of me here, 13. For item 13 to come back with that for any action for a study until once we've worked with the, and done outreach to the community before we start to see what their input is, because both cities, the city of Vista and the city of Oceanside, do not want any changes to this sphere of influence.
But it's not to do away with the study, just to bring it back?
Just to bring it back later, yes.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I'll second that.
Are you deleting this? Are you deleting it or just leaving it in and adding?
Just leaving it and coming back to the commission after we get input from the residents of that area, if that's what they want.
Okay. Are you deleting number 2?
I'm not, no. Rest of it as is, just bringing back that study before we act on it after we get community input.
Mr. Simons.
Thank you. And I do appreciate the Commission's input here. And so as I understand, just for the benefit, Commissioner Desmond, so what you would like with respect to right now, recommendation 13, and the baseline being staff is recommending that we proceed with a limited sphere of influence update and create these two, but in doing so create these a special study area that applies to both Oceanside and Oceanside Harbor. You would like us first to do some outreach to the community itself before we bring that item back to you, the sphere update and the potential creation of a special study area?
This has got nothing to do with the harbor. This is only that 250 acres.
Correct.
So the harbor's left alone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that clarification. And then just with respect to the comments from Commissioner Becker, and certainly they echo City Manager Borrego, I do recognize that our process for MSRs can be better, and we're going to take that item up at the next item. That said, I would be remiss on behalf of staff of noting that we've done, at least a dozen MSRs in terms of affected agencies, most recently City of Escondido, Poway, let alone the Valley Center and Fallbrook. And this is the first time we're hearing that there was a break in the communication. That's on me, but I think staff overall has done a very good job in how we've produced these MSRs and communicating with agencies. So I just wanted to make that comment for staff's benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Commissioner Becker.
Could you address, though, why we would study the SB9 number as opposed to ADUs?
So through the chair, the recommendation to look at SB9 is a result of recent legislation, and we're a political arm of the state of California, so the state has decided that SB9 and the idea of allowing for expedited lot divisions is a good thing. And so as part of your growth management duties at LAFCO, staff believes it makes sense that you take into consideration the potential effects of SB 9 anytime you look at cities going forward. And so that's the spirit of the recommendation. It's to work with SANDAG, tap into their expertise in mapping systems, and be able to quantify, if you will, the potential effects of SB 9, and as the recommendation says, for the benefit of informing the future MSR cycle, all going to your role, commissioners, as being the guardian of boundaries. As to whether boundary expansions make sense in the future or not, it's a tool. It's a tool that we think would have benefit.
But ADUs are legislatively, they've been the same as SB 9.
Correct. Enforced through the local land use authorities' allowance and zoning.
But we don't account for those.
Well, we do, but on a case-per-case, SB 9 is different because it is, again, this expediting tool that the legislature has offered up. And again, our relationship with the legislatures, we're one of their planning arms.
But then I guess what my thinking is maybe we study, how often it's being used. I mean, what if SB 9 is never used and all of a sudden, you've multiplied the city times 4 and it's never been used? And you're saying the city should account for 4 times as many services when it's actually never been, applied for.
It's a fair comment. We certainly could look at ADUs, but we're not for the benefit of who's this going to. It's for the benefit of LAFCO, not the city. So we're not suggesting that our analysis be then sent to the city of Oceanside and say, contemplate this. Our analysis is saying, LAFCO, as you consider the infill potential and your own growth management responsibilities, consider this. So it's an inward-looking resource. It's a resource that we've included in MSRs for Poway and Escondido. We think it makes sense, but this is your document, and if you want to take it out or limit it, what say the commission?
I have a quick comment.
Commissioner, we'll go to Commissioner McKenzie and then Vice Chair Willis.
Wouldn't this information be more accurate in dealing with the city versus SANDAG? I mean, SANDAG takes in everybody, and I don't know just how accurate their information is. And I would think on the ground, the city of Vista, the city of Oceanside, the cities would have a better handle on exactly, if you take all of the lots that you have and you multiply them by 4, you have some lots that aren't, you can't divide them, and you can't put an ADU on them. I would think the city would have a better understanding, a better handle, a better knowledge of what they have on the ground and what can be built.
So through the chair, so this conversation came up, if you recall, with the city manager of Poway a year or two ago, and they suggested that they would prefer LAFCO do that type of mapping if we were to do it with SANDAG and not rely on city of Poway resources. Partly, and maybe City Manager Borrego would agree, they don't necessarily want to look like they're sponsoring the activity. So, again, I think it has merit given your growth management interests. It's an informing tool. It's not meant to presume or to suggest to City X, in this case Oceanside, that they should be accommodating a particular number, but it's values to LAFCO and understanding what is the potential internal growth that LAFCO could expect at a maximum level. Much like, not to get too much in the weeds, but like when we do a CEQA document, right? When we look at potential maximum development, we go to the zoning code and we say, what is the maximum potential here? And we take into account that. Doesn't mean it's actually going to happen, but it's the same informing tool.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Willis.
Yeah, I understand there's a motion and a second here, but I'm not comfortable with item 15. I would like to see that deleted along with item 13. So I don't know if you're willing to amend that to include deleting, because to me, item 15 is a safety issue. And so I'd like to see that along with 13 deleted.
Are you
So
making
you
that
said
a
13.
substitute motion?
Mr. Simons?
So the comment on item number 15 for the audience's benefit, and this goes to what general persons from Morrow Hills were noting. So the recommendation as is to recommend that the Morrow Hills CSD Board revisit conditions on Sleepy Indian Road, which is the main artery, if you will, for the backcountry to get from Oceanside up to Fallbrook and or up past into Temecula. The recommendation is specific to assessing whether an increase in the speed limit is appropriate given this board's duty under state law, not LAFCO law, but state law to assign speed limits to the 85th percentile, right? So every so often, cities, counties, and special districts in the business of road management have to then track speed limits in their otherwise unencumbered route and then essentially set it to up to 85%. This is the key part, Commissioner Willis, to why the recommendation is coming forward to you. It is Morrow Hills CSD's own consultant that has produced a traffic assessment in 2021, and that assessment concluded that speed limits otherwise unencumbered were reaching up to 65 miles per hour. So taking the 85 percentile rule, it seems that there is a prompt under state law for this board to consider increasing the speed limit from 35 up to 55. We are suggesting, and we've heard the comments from the board, that either they believe other mechanisms, speed calming, can help reduce the flow of traffic, and or I've heard comments, well, the 2021 study was done during COVID and the work from home, and it was artificially increasing limits. And in the report, we're saying, we get all that, but then you should have an updated report for your own benefit, either stating why you're not moving the speed limit up, and perhaps there are good reasons, or to move the speed limit up, right? So one or the other, it should just be documented, right? And I know that I had received a call from someone saying, well, why is LAFCO getting involved in this kind of detail? And I can see one commissioner, nodding his head. Well, fair enough, but this district's sole function is in the business of road and speed management. So if that's your one duty under statute, that's what LAFCO is going to assess your performance. So I would encourage the commission, just from staff's level, to view that context in light of the suggestion to remove it. Again, it's just LAFCO's part via the state to prompt more transparency in the decision making. It's ultimately up to the board how it wants to go about it, Morrow Hills, but we're suggesting there is a delta between what their most recent study says and what is actually permitted on the ground, literally on the road. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And 15 is just a suggestion. It's not mandatory. They go through with that. Okay, thanks.
Okay. I have a couple of questions then. So who actually sets that speed limit? Is that the Morrow Hills CSD that actually determines what the speed limit is?
Yes.
Okay. That's one. And then the second one is, I came into this with a favorable impression of the DUC for that sphere of influence study. Can you reiterate what the intent of the sphere of influence study is? What's the idea to get at?
Thank you, Chair. So The recommendation for the commission under 13A to create a special study area of about 250 acres for the Oceanside sphere of influence to cover this unincorporated segment that lies in between Vista and Oceanside goes to this prompt that is from the legislature at the time. Commissioner Anderson was there, that tells LAFCOs one way or the other, when you do service reviews, certainly for cities, and there are disadvantaged unincorporated communities, which parenthetically by definition mean they're inhabited, and their median household income is 80% less or 20% or greater less than the average median household income within that census block, to proactively consider expanding the sphere of those of the city or a special district to include those duck lands for purposes of making it easier for annexations of core urban services, water, sewer, fire, police. Commissioner Desmond appropriately queried, well, how do we know if that's actually what the agents or the residents want? And that's a fair question. The purpose of the special study area is not to, in fact, expand the sphere and an annexation. We, in fact, can't do the annexation, but what we can do is eliminate one, perhaps, bureaucratic huddle, which is when we get developers, and we recently had a developer group that came to LAFCO that wanted to do a project within this particular area, they were confronted with this governmental hurdle of wanting to do a development project in the city of Vista, but they needed sewer service from Oceanside. And so what our suggestion in our special study area would do under statute and policy is allow developers like that to work with two land use authorities at the same time to be able to secure an entitlement with City X. In this case, it would be the City of Vista, while under state and LAFCO policy be able to go to you and ask for an out-of-agency approval for wastewater service. So all said, the legislature is the prompt for you to consider the duck issue. While it is noteworthy to have Oceanside and the City of Vista both submit written communications saying we don't like this, and that certainly was received. In this case, I believe that your core constituency is the duck itself as set by the legislature. Hopefully that covers some. I can go into more detail.
Thank you. That's very helpful. At the end of the day, I'd like to see us move forward with what staff would like to see. The motion on the floor would delay that until there was some conversation with the people who are in the dock. Would there be? What would be the negative impacts, if any, of going that route?
I don't think there would be any immediate negative effects, assuming the commission would be agreeable to staff doing that outreach sooner than later, and perhaps bring you an amended work plan project at your next meeting to give us authorization to do some survey work. And well, staff could, and bring you some results by the end of the fiscal year to inform some decisions.
I think that's fine, but I guess I'm really concerned why both cities are saying no to this, and why can't we get them on board with this? There's something else behind the curtain, I think. And so I just want to make sure that if we get all parties invested in this, and because you got a developer wanting to come in and develop, okay, but to the people living in that area, is that their best wishes as well? Because they may be pushed out as well. So anyway, I just wanted to get their input. And if we didn't have these two letters from each city saying this is not what we want, there's more here to the story. So that's why I wanted the extra time taken.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Simons. I will support I'll support the motion that Commissioner Desmond has made and Commissioner White has seconded. I would also support staff acting expeditiously.
Could I ask one quick question?
Commissioner
Chair?
McKenzie.
Could I ask who serves the other services, fire, water? We know who serves sewer.
Yeah, well, so in the duct itself, this unincorporated pocket, they are fire and public safety, police would be sheriff. I believe Vista Fire Protection District serves a portion of the area. Perhaps another does as well. Perhaps I could provide a more succinct answer at the next meeting as an appendix to our work plan amendment.
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Desmond, seconded by Commissioner White, to accept the staff recommendation while holding off on item 13 until after staff has the opportunity to speak with community members in the dock. That sound right to everybody? Okay. With that, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Yes, with some reservation.
Hold your nose.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathis?
Yes.
Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson? Commissioner Desmond?
Yes. Thank you.
There are 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
All right. Thank you, clerk. Thank you to the commission and to everybody who was in attendance today. That was a robust and healthy conversation, so thank you to everybody who participated in that. Let's move on to our business calendar. We're going to begin with item 7A, which is the proposed update to the rolling 5-year study schedule, and we'll ask staff to present the item.
Actually, I believe 7A we'll jump to is the out-of-service agreement request. So I'm going to ask Joelle to start us off, and I'm going to, Joelle, at the end, offer up a tweak to our recommendation.
All right. Good morning, Chair Whitburn, Vice Chair Willis, and fellow commissioners. My name is Joelle Barilla, Analyst 1, and the item before you is a request received from the City of Vista on behalf of an interested landowner seeking LAFCO's approval to provide extended out-of-agency wastewater services to the unincorporated parcel located at 1678 Sunset Drive. So this residence, materially and as addressed in our revised agenda report that the EO has referenced, is currently connected to Vista's wastewater system via an earlier approval from early 2000s. The parcel is 1.25 acres in size with a single-family residence on site. It is also within the City of Vista's sphere of influence. Now, drawing your attention to the slide, you will see an aerial map of the infected territory and the surrounding lands, which among other things illustrates a transition is underway with rural uses giving way to more urban footprints. It also shows the approximate 1 mile distance between the affected territory and the current Vista city limits. The purpose of this request is to accommodate the landowner's interest to extend authorization of outside wastewater service beyond the existing residence to facilitate a pending application to the County of San Diego for a lot split of the property as allowed by the county and made easier under Senate Bill 9. Should the lot split ultimately happen, the affected territory would result in an additional single-family residence with the allowance for its own accessory dwelling unit. This context aside, Vista's request for extended use requires commission approval with LAFCO's own policies and practices, providing 3 sequential considerations to inform your decision-making. 1, do you believe extending public sewer is merited relative to your growth management interest? 2, does Vista have the capacity to provide extended public sewer? And 3, is out-of-agency service request and as opposed to annexation make sense? As for our analysis and as detailed in the agenda report, your staff believe the Commission can affirmatively address all 3 considerations. Specifically, first, The opportunity for the landowner to subdivide the lot is consistent with county zoning, and with the added allowance of SB 9 provides a clear benefit in adding housing stock and is directly germane to LAFCO's growth management interest. Second, the extension of City of Vista's wastewater service to the balance of the affected territory is readily available with capacity to serve without impact. Third, while annexations are the preferred method under LAFCO law, local conditions justify an out-of-agency service extension as the most effective means to provide wastewater service, given annexation would not be orderly or efficient at this time. Most notably, the affected territory is non-contiguous to the City of Vista, and no less than 4 additional unincorporated properties along Sunset Drive would need to be included in an annexation for connectivity purposes. Therefore, staff recommends the Commission to proceed with the approval of the extended out-of-agency wastewater service authorization, allowing Vista to serve the balance of the affected territory with standard terms and materially without the otherwise common condition of requiring the landowner to file a complete annexation proposal with LAFCO, given it is reasonable to assume establishing connectivity to the city limits is a long way off. It's also further recommended the Commission authorize the EO to proceed with the exemption findings under CEQA. And this concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back to the EO for further comments.
Thank you, Joelle. An outstanding job. This was Joelle's first project, and it got, well, thank you, Barry. All right. And it goes to kind of, the idea that projects are fluid, and with that in mind, there is a fluidity issue here that we recognized at the end of last week, which is why you have a track change version of this report. We wanted to correct the record on a couple of things. And then second, it came to our attention late Friday afternoon as staff was walking out the door that we could not attest on our own whether the existing residents at 1678 Sunset Drive actually had a I-dotted approval from LAFCO back in 2002 when they got their wastewater connection. And so just for the benefit of making sure all the T's are crossed on our end, while not perhaps delaying the landowner's interest in doing trench work before the rainy season starts, we would ask the Commission to amend and expand the approval terms for this, and I'll read this into the record. For the landowner or City of Vista to either A, confirm and provide proof of an existing out-of-service area authorization for LAFCO involving wastewater to this existing residence at 1678 Sunset Drive, or B, submit a complete application for said approval requests with LAFCO. So it's just to make sure that all is on the up and up. So with that amended recommendation, we'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. We can open it up for commission discussion then.
I just make a motion that we go with staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Any further discussion? Seeing none, yes.
When I provided some back in that outline the duct and where that.
Yes. Okay, motion on the floor from.
It much bigger, but yes.
It's in the middle.
Kind of in the far right corner, but the duck is about 250 acres. This is an acre.
And to confirm, this project site is not in a duck.
That's right. It's Commissioner McKenzie. You confused me. I'm just going to put blame on you. It's not in the duck.
Well, you can look where the duck is.
Yes.
This is outside the duck, but it's right next to it.
Near it, yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion from Vice Chair Willis and a second from Commissioner McKenzie. Seeing no further discussion on the item, please call a roll.
Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis? Aye. Commissioner McKenzie? Aye. Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathis?
Yes.
Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson? Aye. Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
There are 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you. That takes us to item 7B, the proposed amendments to policy L106 on conducting municipal service reviews. Let's go ahead with the presentation. We'll turn it over to Mr. Simons.
And to Priscilla.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair Whitburn and Commissioners. Assistant Executive Officer Priscilla Mumpower for the record and behalf of staff. Is it working? Yeah, okay. So today the Commission will receive and review proposed amendments to its existing legislative policy L106, which governs how we go about implementing our municipal service review program here in San Diego County. The topic returns to the Commission from its October 7th meeting, and as you'll recall, initially prompted by feedback by the City of Oceanside, as we heard today, and regarding the lack of opportunity to review and comment on the draft report's recommendations prior to presenting to the Commission. At the October meeting, the Commission reviewed our MSR policy and directed staff to amend it, and in doing so, improve transparency, effectiveness, and stakeholder engagement in conducting municipal service reviews. So staff has returned to the policy and hopefully met the mark. We believe we've addressed the Commission's direction and feedback through 4 key proposed revisions, and I'll briefly review each, but they are up on the screen. So the first is to begin amending the policy with reference to the rolling feature of the 5-year study schedule. So as you know, we have amended our study schedule to being from fixed to a rolling, and so we just want to ensure that this amendment is clear and made explicit within our MSR policy. So that is the first. The second proposed amendment is in response to Commissioner Drake's suggestion to emphasize the intentional use of performance metrics in preparing municipal service reviews. So this includes staff creating and providing an appendix to the policy, and it's provided in your packets, but the high points are shown up on the screen. So relevant examples include categories such as analysis on demographics, service delivery, resource utilization, among others. The third proposed amendment is intended to formalize staff's practice of providing subject agencies with advanced drafts of the municipal service reviews before they are presented to the Commission, and then forwarding their comments to the Commission. But of course, we are expanding it to include the direction from the Commission with requiring staff to provide the written recommendations with the draft report in advance and also establish a 60-day review period. Now, while staff has previously expressed concerns about sharing specific recommendations to maintain data integrity, we recognize the Commission's preference for full transparency and also in managing expectations for subject agencies. Lastly, the fourth amendment is intended to formalize existing practice to require presentations of draft reports as part of voluntarily noticed public hearings. And while statute does not mandate hearings for MSRs, this amendment reflects our goal to enhance transparency and foster public engagement. So hopefully these 4 proposed amendments have met the mark with respect to aligning better with Commission's priorities and preferences and serves to enhance the municipal service review process. So with this in mind, staff recommends approval of the proposed amendments with an immediate effective date. With that, I will stop here and welcome any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mumpower. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay. We will turn it over to the Commission for any discussion, possible motion. Commissioner Desmond.
I just have a couple of questions. I thought we already had a rolling 5-year. I'm not sure if that was a term that was used, but it was every 5 years a new MSR. So what's new?
Yes. Commissioner Desmond, thank you for the question. So the rolling 5-year study schedule, we previously had a fixed study schedule, meaning we just simply had a 5-year accounting of what MSRs we would be working on. But as part of our recent amendments to the study schedule, we've implemented a rolling study schedule where the first 2 years of the study schedule are reflected as part of our work plan, what the commission has adopted. And then the next 3 years are simply a telegraphing tool for the subject agencies, meaning you're on our mind. We will be presumably coming forward with an MSR on your subject agency, but we haven't adopted it as part of our work plan. So just in wanting to update the policy to reflect the change that the commission has made, we're simply updating the policy to reflect it. I hope that makes sense.
And the other one, as far as getting the recommendations to the entity that's being, that the MSR is being done on, I think I heard the term that before it goes, they would get to see it before it comes to the commission. Do they get to see it before it is made public?
Yes, that is the intent. So we would provide the recommendations in the full
And I didn't know if
report.
we could do that transparency-wise or anything government-wise, but I just want to make sure that so things aren't used against them and things that might not be, that need massaging or may not be factually true on one side or the other. So, okay, so it's before it's made public, not just before the commission.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Where's the word? Where's the wording for the 60 days? I'm looking.
I'll make a quick motion to approve.
Allow me a moment to find it on my agenda report here. Thank you, Keen.
So Commissioner Willis, the second attachment is Priscilla's track change version of the current policy. Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie?
You might want to note, because I've noticed that I read halfway through that and it didn't make any sense because they're running track changes. Then I found the second one. Okay, that's my problem. Question, are these changes going to allow LAFCO staff to work with the agency during their preparation time? In other words, well, we looked at this document, and this document said this, but then you talk to maybe the director of that department or the general manager, and this is really the way it is. You know, maybe pragmatically, it's black and white, but there may be some gray in there that needs to also be part of the and the the city manager, his comment was a roadmap. I think that's very important because I don't know what an MSR is. And okay, I've got this. I think there's something paperwork that goes out, and we're going to do an MSR on you. My district has had that paper for 2 years, maybe 3, somewhere in there. And every couple months, I ask my general manager, well, have you heard from LAFCO? No, I haven't heard a word. Don't know what's going on. So there needs to be some kind of communication. I don't know whether this policy includes that nuance or not.
Commissioner McKenzie, we can certainly formalize. I think it is included as part of our existing staff practice to attend once we notify the subject agency of our intent to begin an MSR and that it has been adopted as part of the work plan. We do provide the invitation for staff to attend any of the board meetings and provide sort of that roadmap via a PowerPoint that we present to the board. And we're happy to always, meet with city leadership or the agency leadership and provide further detailing. But if you're not satisfied with how it is in policy, we can certainly look at maybe formalizing that, and I'll defer to Keen to perhaps expand.
I'm just looking at making it easier and transparent for the agency. And not getting the staff report and having to read, 200, even though there is a period of time for them to do that.
No, and so through the chair, we hear you. we're on it, improving our communication. And to that point, he's behind the city manager, but Aiden, our brand new communication associate, is helping us get word out going forward. In fact, for those who will have some time before watching election news tomorrow, if you go to our website, we're starting with Oceanside, our kind of video snapshots of these studies to help further expand and explain the MSR, first and foremost, Commissioner McKenzie, and then some of the key recommendations in these. So we are certainly focusing in on improving how we are getting word out proactively, and then as we go along, making sure we're soliciting input along the way, which is something that admittedly, is sometimes difficult for your staff because historically we've been understaffed, but now you have the full bullpen with us.
So are you going to email this out, this policy out to all of the agencies? Cover letter that says, hey.
Absolutely, we can do that.
And before there's a motion, I have some real issues with the appendix, and I don't know whether the motion is going to include the appendix.
So we do have a motion from Commissioner Desmond that was seconded by Vice Chair Willis to adopt a staff recommendation. That's what's on the floor at the moment.
Okay, because I have some real problems with some of the comments on the appendix that are probably more than can be handled at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Becker.
Yes, so I have the benefit of having my city manager here today. So for her being here, and I know that Solana Beach is going to have an MSR coming up, could you please just sort of describe the process of what the early engagement would be and how many meetings she could expect? Do you present at City Council, or what should she be following Aiden on? Is it the website of LAFCO, or just how could she be better prepared?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Becker. So staff typically begins with a simple notification to agency leadership, and then we invite to participate in a meeting where the introductory meeting is simply for leadership to get to know staff and for staff to get to know leadership, but then also to provide that more informational piece, right, of what an MSR is. Sometimes they're not too familiar with LAFCO, so what LAFCO does and what we're about, and the intent to work collaboratively through the MSR process. And then once that meeting begins, we do let them know kind of the timeline with respect to beginning the data collection piece. And then we also ask if they would be willing to host us to or invite us to one of the board meetings where we can provide the same presentation to their liking to their board or city council. And then at that point, we begin the data collection process, and we can do, at the liking of the leadership, hold meetings where we give them updates, or also go to city council meetings. So it kind of is a process collaboratively where we ask what the liking is of the leadership, and if they would like us to attend, quarterly meetings, then we can certainly make that happen.
So they can contact you at any time. It's not just
Absolutely.
You get one meeting and you're done.
Absolutely. And just to kind of speak on that a little bit, we do, through the data collection piece, we ask who are the appropriate staff contacts for certain pieces, whether it be the water piece, wastewater, parks and recreation. And so we're usually in contact with their directors, and then once we come forward with a draft, then we'll make sure that we're in contact with the city manager and ensuring that they've reviewed the full MSR or the draft report, which will now include the recommendations.
Very good.
So this is the roadmap, but it's not in writing. This is practice.
Right. It's there's a little bit of a roadmap as part of a PowerPoint, but it's not as part of the policy here in front of you.
Maybe the roadmap.
Okay. All right. Any further commission discussion? Seeing none, this was discussed at last month's meeting, and I just want to thank and appreciate staff for being responsive to the commission's input, which I think is what we see reflected here. So With that, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie?
No.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathis?
Yes.
Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson? Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
There's 7 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion passes.
All right. We are getting to the home stretch here. Item 7C is our quarterly updates on high priority projects and municipal service reviews on healthcare districts and the San Diego Association of Governments. And we'll turn it over to Mr. Simons.
Great. So we're going to have a collection of speakers. Michaela and Joelle will introduce each of their items and then bring forward the consultant for a brief check-in. And Commission, this is the opportunity to make sure that staff is on the roadmap that the Commission sees fit as we prepare these otherwise high priority projects.
Hello again, Analyst 2, Michaela Peters. So I've been assigned the project manager alongside LAFCO consultant Adam Wilson on the Healthcare Districts MSR, ranked number 1B on our work plan and covering Fallbrook, Grossmont, Palomar, and Tri-City. So Adam will certainly go into more detail shortly, but to tee it up, the MSR comes as a follow-up to an MSR done in 2015, which was very much qualitative in nature. But for this review, we plan to evaluate the 4 districts at first on a macro level, following our typical MSR structure. And then with commission approval, we would like to explore the districts in part 2 at a micro level, more closely assessing how the districts can better align with community needs. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation off to Adam.
Thank you, Michaela. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Whitburn, Honorable Commissioners. Adam Wilson, LAFCO consultant for the record. As Michaela indicated, we're here to provide you a quarterly update on the healthcare MSR. Quick background as a quick refresher for you. We provided your commission an update back in May of 2024 of this year. Highlights at that time, we were embarking on the beginning of this MSR of the 4 healthcare districts in San Diego County. As she indicated, you guys, as a commission, designated the project one of 2 high priority projects in your current work plan. We then started to conduct extensive preliminary outreach from stakeholders to give us some early guidance to the process. We then met with all 4 CEOs of the 4 healthcare districts individually and once collectively, and also attended all 4 board meetings at each district to introduce the MSR, and I think it speaks to the premise of your earlier discussions on the previous items of getting out in front of this, showing them the roadmap, and also making sure that we included them as the process to make that inclusive as possible to get their buy-in, which they openly supported. Next slide is the current progress of the project. The project details have materialized since our last update to you since May of 2024. As Michaela indicated, we developed a new scope of work, bifurcating the project into 2 phases, one being a macro level and the second phase at a future date being a micro level. We did this on the premise of 2 main reasons. One, we discovered early on that the healthcare landscape is very complex. It's very multi-layered. We wanted to make sure that this first phase looked at an analysis that was reasonable and also stated within some resources that we had. And then with hopefully the success of phase 1, we will get your buy-in for phase 2 at a future work plan to get some added resources to maybe potentially dig down and drill deeper on the analysis. With phase 1, we executed a contract to bring on a nationwide healthcare consulting firm. They're on board. They're helping us do the heavy lifting of the analysis. The consultant has also met with each district independently and helping that data information and collection towards their analysis. Early highlights to these discussions between the consultant and the districts. One, as any MSR, the core function is boundary and sphere of influence updates. We know from one, i.e. Grossmont, they've expressed interest in expanding their boundaries, so that will get further additional review. And the next 2 bullet points is probably 2 of most importance, since we've all probably read much of what these healthcare districts are doing in the news of recent in the last year. But the financial status and solvency of each district and the governance structure and future models of what those districts would look like. As you've read in the news, there was discussions between Tri-City and UCSD to form an affiliation. Those deals and discussions broke down, but also it seems to be up and down the state that these public districts are looking at some sort of affiliation model to move forward to maintain that fiscal solvency. Also through our outreach, we earlier this year, we went to our Special Districts Advisory Committee. They gave us some feedback related to access to care, and then also hospital wall wait times. Their ambulances transport patients to these hospitals, and they spend a significant amount of time by law and required to wait before the patient is being seen by the ER. Each district has expressed that this is a concern and it is an issue, and so hopefully we can get some further analysis on this as well. And then ultimately it would all wrap up in what these short-term and long-term outlooks look for each district. But the good news is the common theme is we've got feedback from all 4 districts that they really are embracing a third-party review of their operations. So what are our next steps? We're scheduling our healthcare consultant to come out to San Diego in the next couple weeks. We're eyeing the November 18th week. We anticipate they're going to do some site visits with each district and their CEO and CFOs. We anticipate the consultant to provide us with their final report by the end of this year. We will continue our engagement and update each district's board of directors as we progress with this project. And then we anticipate early next year to develop the draft MSR with it coming before your commission for a decision of spring of 2025. So that concludes my report, and I'm here to answer any questions, comments, or any feedback that you may have.
Let me think about this. Why don't we go ahead and do both presentations before we take questions, just to make it a little simpler.
Alrighty, hello again, Commission. Joelle Barilla, Analyst 1. So this morning we will provide you with an update on the SANDAG MSR, and I will be the project manager. This MSR was added as part of our work plan in May 2024, and it's as priority number 2. And we've made steady progress, but we are still in the beginning phases. As you all know, we've recruited Bill Fulton from the William Fulton Group as our lead project consultant, who will cover the services provided by SANDAG. Bill is a well-respected planner with expertise in land use, economic development, and urban development. And he most recently came to the Commission to present the informational report, The Contours of Regional Growth, back in June 2024. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fulton.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. As Joelle indicated, we are at the beginning stages of this MSR, so I'm just going to give you a quick update. Whoops. As you know, this was listed as a high priority in your 2025 work plan. I'm involved with it, although Joelle is the project manager. This project will take well into next year. This is the first ever MSR of a council of governments anywhere in the state. SANDAG, as I'm sure you know, performs a wide variety. SANDAG is a joint powers authority, but they perform a wide variety of functions under state and federal law. This MSR is focused on transportation planning, on housing, and on climate adaptation. We are not focused on the design and construction activities of SANDAG. So far, we've done a considerable initial research and literature review. We're still at the information gathering stage. We have had several good meetings with SANDAG so far. There is a little bit of scope refinement we're working on still within that range of transportation, housing, and climate adaptation. And we should be prepared to have an administrative draft by next summer. And I think that's the entire presentation, so I'd be happy as well to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. That concludes the presentations. Let's go see if there's any public comment on this item.
No public comment.
Okay, we'll open it up to commission discussion. I think Vice Chair Willis was going to ask a question.
Adam, where does it stand, that issue where...
Mesa Rock.
went out of their district? That issue stand?
Probably defer to Keene, but I think those contracts that they came and executed with us for the labor and delivery OBGYN expire next year. So, yeah, I believe March.
Commissioner Becker.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have a question for Bill.
Oh.
Not to be rude. I like you too, but...
Hello, Commissioner.
Hello. So you talked about the three areas. I guess my question is so behind transportation, housing, and adaptation, I think that all really starts with the data that's behind that.
Yes.
And I know the cities have had trouble getting the data behind, especially the housing and the transportation. And I'm curious what you think about LAFCO recommending some kind of maybe data sharing agreements with SANDAG, or making that a priority, this
Right.
data sharing between the agencies and the cities.
Commissioner, you're way ahead at the recommendation stage. We're still at the information gathering stage. But you are correct that the SANDAG's data operation, which there's a lot to it, which underlies both the RENA and the regional plan, is definitely part of what we're going to look at. One of SANDAG's roles is to serve as the regional data center, census data center, designated by the state, and that will be part of the analysis.
Okay, it should be a key part, I feel,
Yeah, okay.
because, that's what everything is based on.
Yes.
So we all need to have the same data to make all of our decisions, I guess.
Yes, and in fact, if you'll recall in the previous study we worked on, one of the recommendations was for the LAFCO itself and the SANDAG to work more closely together on the data that's used in the MSRs. But yes, I think it's a very good point. Thank you.
And then the other thing, what about working with SANDAG on regionalizing the RENA allocations and production? Is that something that's going to be...
What do you mean by regionalizing?
Well,
I see. I'm sorry. I do remember now, Commissioner Becker, your thought that the thought that you and some other representatives have had, that there should be the possibility of a joint or multi-jurisdictional approach to RENA rather than approach by individual jurisdictions. That is definitely something we will look at as part of the housing. We did sort of look at that in the previous report when we indicated that particularly if the county has moved away from this since then, but you'll remember in the previous report the county was holding a tough line on VMT mitigation, and so we suggested there might be some coordination between movement of RENA RENA obligation between jurisdictions and sphere changes. So yes, that will definitely, and that's been a topic that's been discussed at the state level for many years, if not decades. And so that will also be part of what we discuss.
very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. I got a question for one of each of you, whoever's wants to take first one. And so how about the on the hospitals? One of the things that I've seen happening recently is consolidation or partnerships between different entities helping out or moving in. So is that going to be any part of the MSR of potential, or if it makes sense, or I don't speak hospital, so I don't really know if they do or not in some of these cases.
Yeah, I would
but
say
I'd like to have a
any.
better understanding.
I would say any and all outcomes at this point in time are on the table, whether it's a merger, whether it's a consolidation, whether it's some sort of joint affiliation, joint venture. All those models are being discussed. I think it's evident that Grossmont has had one for 20 plus years. It seems to be the other districts are moving in some sort of that fashion, and they may not be identical, but there's a lot of commonalities. There's a lot of differences, but I think any one of those outcomes will be reviewed and perhaps maybe even recommended, but to be determined.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that was part of the conversation. And I guess with Bill on the transportation, one of the things that unfortunately SANDAG in the recent news has had accountability issues or monetary issues. As the 125, there was some issues about not being able to find the money that was supposedly brought in from that freeway. So, hopefully accountability and oversight might be recommendations that we could put in there. I know they've already got an ITOC, which is a Taxpayers Oversight Committee, but that's only specific for one type of one tax. And if there's other, and I know they have an auditor now and has been making recommendations, but I think accountability has been kind of a sore spot for SANDAG, and if we can make recommendations there. And then the other thing is, I would be interested in is there too much mission creep? It seems like SANDAG just they keep getting more and more things added to them. And there was even a point when I was on the board that they were thinking about taking over the school buses and things, something like that. There was a lot of mission creep, and I don't know if that's,
I think,
something worth looking
right.
into.
In response, Commissioner Desmond, to your first question, I would say, number one, we've taken a hard look at their own performance metrics. Number two, we probably are not as deep-pocketed as the independent performance auditor or the Department of Justice in looking at SR 125. And number three, I know Joelle will be doing some financial analysis as well, if you could just talk for a second about what that is.
I'm actually going to defer to Keen on that, please.
Well, here, if I'll bring it back around, I'm looking for more, and we don't want to get too far into the weeds, but how can they be more favorable public facing when it comes to these issues?
Yes,
I think that's really what they need to do is credibility needs to be increased.
Right, that's a good point. As far as this, remind me of your second point. I was going to say something
let's
about.
see, mission creep.
Mission creep. I think one of the things we began to do in the previous report, and we can do in this report, is make it very clear what SANDAG's mission is and what its role is under federal law, under state law, and under local powers agreements. I don't know, Keen, if you want to. So that is part of the goal, is just to clarify what do they do and what are they supposed to do. But Keen, do you want to address the accountability question further?
Yeah, just very briefly. So there will be a section Joel will head up on metrics that are both LAFCO born, but also industry standards with respect to what are the accountability standards. And certainly we would anticipate that be part of a robust discussion when we bring that draft report as to whether they're hitting the mark or if there are other things that could be explored.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Becker.
And I just want to go back to the transparency. I hope that we are discussing with SANDAG all of these things, because I do kind of feel like SANDAG has heard transportation, housing, and climate adaptation. I do not think that they've heard that, the financial aspect and, what are your I just want to be clear with them that you're diving into all kinds of different things. But, and it reminded me, since you're referring to your report that's laying there, I see there's copies on the table. Have we been presented, have you presented to LAFCO your report?
Yes.
Okay. I don't recall that. I'm so sorry.
That was Mr. Simon's last spring, right?
Really? Okay. I might have not been here, but thank you. Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? Commissioner McKenzie.
My big question is whether or not these two studies are going to take in the governance issue of all four hospitals and SANDAG. I think that's the big elephant in the room, is the governance and their transparency and how they work. And then you get into what they're going to be working on, and they're going to be working on the transportation, housing, and climate adaptation. but they're up here with the governance. And when I'm reading, there is limited governance. It's more staff-oriented. So I would like to see what kind of governance, because you're looking at governance in cities and special districts when you do an MSR. I think that is an important part of these studies.
So through the chair, Commissioner McKenzie, and as Michaela and Adam noted, we anticipate teeing up those discussions as part of this part one, but because we are operating within a budget, that's why we are going into this with the mindset that we're going to have a number of topics for you to consider authorizing as part of a second part or part two, and that would go further into, among other things, governance options and the interplay that we encountered firsthand about 16 months ago, for example, with the Palomar Tri-City issue about agencies serving outside their boundary. And in that case, perhaps with merit, but it nevertheless highlights there is a boundary issue if we have agencies actively looking to serve outside their boundaries. So we're going to tee it up, but we're also going to need to have commission input on about how far we actually go.
Okay. Any further commission discussion? Seeing none, this was an informational update, and we will move on to item 7D, and that is the report on the 2024 CALAFCO Annual Conference. So we will hear that report from Ms. Mumpower.
Yes, thank you, Chair Whitburn and Commissioners. Once again, Priscilla Mumpower, Assistant Executive Officer for the record. So today I'm just going to provide some highlights from our wonderful trip to Fish Camp, which is just outside of Yosemite. I've learned to say that instead of saying that we went to Yosemite. But nonetheless, thank you, Michaela. We, staff and two of our commissioners, Vice Chair Willis and Commissioner McKenzie, attended the CALAFCO Annual Conference, which was held October 16th through the 18th. There was approximately 320 attendees from over 50 LAFCOs, so that was really nice to sort of network with all of those different LAFCOs and touch base on all of our different and interesting projects. Your staff also took full advantage of the opportunity to bond, so we enjoyed a guided tour of Yosemite National Park prior to the conference, and for your viewing pleasure, we have some photos up on the screen of your staff having the time of their life.
Pretty.
Salute.
But we promised we did engage in some valuable work and networking while away. We participated in several general sessions, one of which featured a panel discussion on environmental justice with yours truly, Keen Simons, our executive officer, up there. And it highlighted the Commission's own policy L114, and its related practices regarding environmental justice. Separately, CALAFCO also squared away some business-related activities, including an election, which filled 4 board positions for the Southern Region. Newly elected members include Steve Sanchez from Riverside and Derek McGregor from Orange County. Now, CALAFCO also held an annual business meeting, which took place on October 17th, and this involved a lengthy discussion on a rather straightforward, yet surprisingly controversial amendment to the bylaws regarding board of director absences. The amendment produced reducing the numbers of permissible consecutive absences from 3 to 2, and the controversy centered around whether the board should have discretion in classifying them as excused or unexcused absences. Ultimately, the board maintained its existing discretion in classifying the absences, but did reduce the number of permissible absences from 3 to 2. So in closing, the conference really provided a great opportunity for your staff to bond together, but also with other LAFCOs across the state. And so I'll stop here and defer to Vice Chair Willis or Commissioner McKenzie should they want to add any other comments.
Yes. what's my acronym for what I am now, Keene? There's probably an acronym for my vote. For my vote.
Do you really want to know?
There's an acronym for everything,
Really
so.
want to know?
What's my official position on the vote that I take at LAFCO? What's that called? Anyway, I voted for Steve Sanchez. So,
Vice Chair Willis served as your voting member for the business meeting, and there was two members running for that particular seat, and Chair Willis saw fit to vote for Steve Sanchez, council member from La Quinta.
Yeah.
And he won.
La Quinta.
Very La Quinta.
It was overwhelmingly for Steve.
Okay, all right. Finding out new things every time.
Anyway, that was a great, because I think Steve Sanchez is a really good one. I like him a lot, got to know him. And to me, I love going to these conferences because it's an opportunity to talk to other districts, what's going on with them and the issues they're dealing with. So I really enjoy it. It was a beautiful area, of course, and a beautiful facility. Thanks.
I just have two comments. One is on the general session of, where is it? LAFCO's role in environmental justice. There were three speakers. The first two ladies did in my opinion, did the ethereal environmental justice, and Keene was the last one up, and he tied it perfectly to what it has to do and how LAFCO is involved in the environmental justice. Because they were off over here, and I'm thinking, how does that work with LAFCO? What is that, I mean, they were up here. Keene brought it back down to this is what environmental justice means, and this is how we handle it. So thank you very much for that. And to Vice Chair Willis's comment, I also talked to quite a few people, and it's amazing how many counties are not doing MSRs. There's several counties, talking about MSR. Oh, we haven't done MSRs, no, we don't do that. So we're probably ahead of the game. So it was a good conference, and I think the next one is Keene, isn't it, down here in San Diego?
Right across the street at the Wyndham.
Yeah, you may want to take, some of the commissioners may want to take advantage of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner McKenzie, Vice Chair Willis, Ms. Mumpower. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No.
Okay, this was an informational item. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's move on to item 8, which is our executive officer report.
Just very briefly, all of you have a letter that I was forgetful not sending out earlier to you, but it's a letter from me to CALAFCO's executive director. And as Priscilla mentioned, there was quite a bit of consternation at the CALAFCO annual business meeting, which is a theme. Unfortunately, from your staff's perspective, CALAFCO has somewhat devolved into some fiefdoms. And the response rates on various things haven't been great. So I sent that letter on behalf of LAFCO as part of management's thought about how you choose to prioritize your resources. So in that letter, we've simply gone on record saying, perhaps unlike previous years, I think staff will have a discussion with the commission as to whether you want to continue to allocate your resources towards that membership or that association, and I wouldn't be surprised if other LAFCOs join in. So unfortunately, some issues with our association. But other than that, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Simons.
Have we gotten a response to your letter yet?
No, which is part and parcel the issue.
Well, this is only 10 days old. Has to go to the board probably. What are our membership dues? ¿Cuántos pesos?
I think roughly 15,000.
All right. With that, are there any commissioner announcements or requests for future items?
Got a comment, and
Yes, Vice Chair Willis.
And I know that I think I've mentioned this before, but thank you, Jim Desmond. You spearheaded that funding for Valley Center Fire Protection District. That has been a major objective of mine to focus on that till it got done. And God, that is, I can't tell you what a victory that is. That they have proper funding, and Jim spearheaded that. He got it. So what was the final vote, by the way? 5-0. 5-0. Nice. So a nonpartisan issue that.
So now what did they do?
And
Yeah, what did you guys do?
We voted to increase the proportionment of the tax dollars going to Valley Center Fire. They were the lowest of anyone in the county at only getting 2%, where CAL FIRE gets 6%.
And Deer Springs, too.
Yeah, Deer Springs as well as Valley Center. And the average is about 12%. And so Valley Center was struggling. And so we were able to get that. Unfortunately, that's less money coming to the county, but that's more money going to that fire district. And coming up with fire season, it was a smart thing to do.
So they got what percent? 6?
6. Same as Cal.
6 of 1%.
Yeah,
6% of 1%.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Jim. I can't say it enough. That is such a thrilling victory. And so anyway, just wanted to make a comment about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Willis. Any other commissioner announcements or requests for future items? Seeing none, we have what is going to be a very brief closed session item. Before we break into closed session, Clerk, do we have any public comment on the closed session item?
No comments.
Okay. At this time, we will move into a brief closed session. We will return to open session. We have concluded our closed session. There is no action to report out of closed session. That brings us to the end of our agenda, and this meeting is adjourned.